G'day guys, how always fraught with danger. It's something I do every couple of months. There's been actually a lot of activity in this arena in the last couple of months since I last did the pound for pound ratings. But pretty much what it is, I'm going to go through my top 10 Aussie pound for pound fighters and the top 10 world pound for pound fighters. And as I said, it's always fraught with danger because everyone's got different ways in how they rate their fighters, the parameters. Is it just ability? Is it the record? Is it activity? Who knows? Did I say activity? I'm not sure. Sorry, I might have said activity. Sorry, it's been a long day already. But yeah, as I said, activity, records, quality of opposition, all these different things that come into it. But it's always a little bit of fun. So I'm going to run through the Aussie list first, and we'll get into the world list. And as always, this is why I do this live, by the way. It's always great to have your feedback. So if you are out there watching and you want to have some input, then the comment section is there. Sorry. That way. Sorry, the camera, that way. Put it up there, and we'll go through it and see what you have to say. So, all right, well, let's start with the Aussie pound for pound ratings. And as I said, this is always a bit dangerous. But I'm going to start at number 10. We'll work our way down to number 1. Then I'll put the full list up, and you can let me know that I don't know anything about boxing, or maybe that you'll agree. It's always a little bit of both. So let's start at number 10 in the Aussie pound for pound rankings. And I've started with Nikita Tszyu. Now, Nikita, so I'm going, just forgive me if I keep sort of turning to my right here, because I've just got their records up just so I've got a little bit more reference. Normally I can have a webcam on here so I can bring you into it, but for some reason I can't work it out tonight. So he's 9-0. I know he's only had the 9 fights. There's probably some other fighters that maybe you could put in front of him. I thought, well, actually, I'll go over my explanations after this is all done, by the way. But I've started with Nikita, so 9-0. Coming off the 10-round decision over Danilo Creati. Not a overly great performance, but I thought the fight with Dylan Biggs, Jack Brubaker, the Benjamin Bomber was just a wipeout. So, who was a very well-held, opinionised, I suppose, of Benjamin Bomber. I'm trying to spit that out. For some reason, I'm struggling to get going tonight, but I'm sure as we get going, I'll warm up. But Benjamin Bomber was recognised as a really good young prospect, and Nikita's wiped him out in 1 round. Jack Brubaker, always tough. And then Dylan Biggs, who a lot of people actually picked Dylan Biggs to beat Nikita Tszyu. I must admit I wasn't one of them. I thought he was a good young talent, Dylan Biggs, but I just didn't think he was really up to the level of Nikita. I think Nikita's one of those fighters, maybe at this stage especially, that he sort of fights to the level of his opponent. And we've seen him sort of struggle in some fights. He's been rocked a few times. Of course, Creati, who I gave no chance whatsoever, almost had him out of there. I think it was the 6th round from memory. So he's had his moments, but I look at that Dylan Biggs fight when Biggs came in at 10-0 and was on fire. And as I said, a lot of people actually picked him to beat Nikita Tszyu. And Nikita Tszyu was just an absolute masterclass. So it was stopped in the 5th round. So that's why I've got Nikita Tszyu ranked at number 10. And also his ability, overall ability as well. He's a supremely gifted young guy. I'm not quite sure he's going to go to the heights of his brother Tim. But I just think at the moment, in a pretty deep pool, by the way, with Aussie boxers, I've got him at number 10. I just think he's on his way. Is Nikita? I think he's got fight being announced in the next week or two, so I'll keep an eye on that. So let's get into number 9. This might raise a few eyebrows, but I've got Paulo Acuso. Now, as I go here, I'm going to type in his name. So again, I've got his record in front of me so I don't make any mistakes. All right, so Sweet Pea, 7-0. Now, this is probably another one like Nikita, who, when it comes down to maybe his record versus some other fighters, I've sort of balanced it out with the talent of Paulo Acuso. I think he's one of the most gifted fighters in Australia at the moment. Even I think on the same path as Jai Apataya. I think he's a great young fighter. 7-0, as I said. Look, I was a little bit surprised. I've said on here a few times that he left No Limit because I think his career's stalled a little bit since then. His last couple of fights, he beat Emmanuel Dunso back in March with a first-round knockout. So we can't really gain much from that. Before that, it was a 10-round decision over Gabriel Omar Diaz. That was in October last year. And I'm pretty sure his last fight with No Limit was July last year. Redall Quinlan when he won over 8 rounds. I was surprised he actually went 8 rounds with Quinlan, if I'm going to be honest. But yeah, no, I think he's well on his way. Supremely talented young guy. My only doubt with him at the moment is if he's got the right team behind him. Now, he obviously left No Limit for a reason, but I'm just not sure why he would leave the number one promotional firm in Australia. And he hasn't really done a lot since. His last couple of fights, I think, have been on Stan. Not a great way to first get yourself out there to the Australian public and more importantly, the world public. But also the quality of opposition, I'm not quite sure has been there. I mean, having said that, his last fight was Redall Quinlan, who's a classic journeyman. But I just think they have the power, the resources, probably the money to take Paul Alcuso off, and just for whatever reason he left No Limit. But I'm sure he's got his reasons. But that's probably the only doubt I've got on Paul Alcuso at the moment is whether he's got the ability to go for further in his career. But at the moment, we're judging him purely on what he's done so far, and I think he's the number 9 ranked Aussie fighter at the moment. Let's go to number 8, and I've gone for Liam Wilson. Now, Liam's been very unlucky with the quality of guys he's come up against in his world title fights. Emmanuel Navarrete and Oscar Valdez. I mean, probably apart from Shakur Stevenson, the 2 best super featherweights of the last probably 10 years. I suppose you could put Lomachenko in there if you will, but there's been a few anyway. But where is he? So he's 13-3. Got a fight with Yusuf Dib lined up. So I think if he wins that will probably solidify his position. But yeah, he's coming off that 7th round knockout loss to Oscar Valdez. Before that, had a good win over Jackson John England. Carlos Maria Alanis, and then there was a Navarrete fight before that. So, I mean, this guy is extremely unlucky that he's not currently a world champion. He had Navarrete on the canvas. It wasn't the long count. It was the mouth guard was spat out, which made it a long count. So, look, extremely unlucky, but unfortunately that is boxing. I thought he was really brave against Oscar Valdez. I thought he started really well. But as has been discussed numerous times, a little bit stubborn listening to the corner, got drawn into a slugfest with Oscar Valdez and paid the price in the end. But I think on his day or on the night, he is capable of mixing it again at the top level. I suppose we'll see a little bit more when he fights Yusuf Dib. But at the moment, I've got him at number 8, and I think he actually has slipped maybe a couple of cogs since the last time I did this. But still, I think definitely in the top 8 fighters in this country, which says a lot about Aussie boxing at the moment, where we've got Liam Wilson at number 8. So really good young talent. And let's see what he's got when he takes on Yusuf Dib. When is it? Next week. The 10th of July. So it's on the Sam Goodman card. So it should be a good night. Let's go to number 7. And one of my favourites, of course, Andrew Maloney. So, look, Andrew could be forgiven for maybe slipping a little bit lower than what he is. But what we've got to look at, he was extremely unlucky not to be the WBC interim super flyweight champion, and maybe with a fight lined up with Jesse Bam Rodriguez. So he is 26-4. That loss was to Pedro Guevara back on the Lomachenko and Cambosis card. Before that, had a good win over Judy Flores. And then, of course, was that vicious knockout loss to Junto Nakatani back in May last year. That was just brutal. But before that, he'd been on a bit of a run. He'd had a 4-fight winning streak against some solid opposition there. So, look, I think we can't just judge him just on that loss to Guevara, because I think it could have gone either way. I actually thought he won the fight, but it is what it is. But I think Andrew Maloney still definitely number 7. And in my opinion, I could have maybe had him a little bit higher than what I've got him, but I think it's about right considering the opposition, or the Australian opposition that we're about to get into for the top 6. So Andrew Maloney, number 7 for me. So let's get into the top 6, and we've got Sam Goodman. Of course, he's on a bit of a tear at the moment as well. He's got that fight lined up next week against Warra Watt, I think it's pronounced. Bringing up his record here. So he's 18-0. Obviously looking for that fight with Inouye. Let's see whether he can get that fight with no Inouye. I think we all thought that he might have that fight, the next one with Inouye in September, but it's a little bit of who you ask, because apparently, as we saw, he did go up in the ring in Japan when Inouye beat Neri. And as I said, that's probably why we all thought that he was going to be next. But looks like Inouye will fight Doheny, and Goodman will fight, as I said, Warra Watt. So, but that's what I was going to say. The strange thing to me was the fighter, from what I heard, was offered to Sam Goodman, and he said, "No, I've already got a fight locked in with Warra Watt." I'm not sure why you would fight again and another world title eliminator when you've actually been offered a world title fight. Now, again, I don't know the whole story. I'm just sort of going by what I've seen and what I've heard and been told, but just seems a little bit odd to me, and especially the fact that Sam beat Doheny, was it last year or the year before? But either way, I've got him at number 6. He's coming off that fourth round stoppage of Mark Sleeves. Before that, he had the win over Zhong Lu, who was 19-0 at the time. Miguel Flores, who was 25-4-1. Raiz Alim, who was undefeated, 20-0, the American. So, and then there was the Doheny fight from, was it March last year? So, look, just on a real roll at the moment is Sam Goodman. And I've said on here a few times, I really do take my hat off to Sam, that even though myself, along with probably a lot of you guys and girls out there, maybe think the Inouye fight might be a bit too far, the fact he's actually putting his hands up and saying, I want that fight, you got to give Sam credit. So for me, the number 6 ranked Aussie fighter at the moment, pound for pound. All right, so let's get into the top 5 of the Aussies, and it starts with George Kambosos Jr. And again, this shows just how deep we bat here in Australia at the moment. We've got the former undisputed lightweight champion at number 5. So look, I probably don't have to look at his record too much recently. Of course, he had the 2 losses to Devin Haney, coming off the win over Teofimo Lopez, granted. Then had the very dubious decision win over Maxi Hughes, and then has since lost to George Kambosos, Vasily Lomachenko. So, yes, you could probably say he's lost, 3 of his last 4 fights since winning the belts, but look at the quality of opposition. Lomachenko and Devin Haney. And again, I know he was a little bit lucky over Maxi Hughes, but a win's a win. And that was for the IBO lightweight title. So I think he's still got a little bit left in him, George. But for me, still the number 5 ranked Aussie fighter at the moment. And it's probably the top 5 you could probably throw up in the air and have him all in all sorts of different concoctions. But again, I'll bring it up at the end of this and you can have your say. All right, so we go to number 4, and we have Jason Maloney. Now, Jason, a little bit stiff. He, of course, lost his bantamweight title in his last fight. I'll just bring up his record here. So he is 27-3, coming off that loss to Takai. And look, no disgrace in that. He went to Japan. He put it all on the line, and unfortunately couldn't get the job done. And lost a unanimous decision there. But before that, had a great win over Saul Sanchez. The Vincent Astrolabio fight, what a performance that was. Before that, he had that tough win over Navapon Kakahanya, who was 56-1-1 from Thailand. And again, a few other wins before that as well, before the loss to Inouye back in 2020. So he's been active. He's won the version of the world title, defended the version of the world title, and no disgrace whatsoever with the loss to Yoshiki Takai. So I've got him at number 4. All right, so we go to the big 3. Now, this could be all over the place again. I'm sure everyone's probably got their different opinions, but this is just my point of view. I've gone for Liam Paro at number 3. And, of course, what a win he had in his last fight over Subriel Matias. I'll just bring his record up here. All right, so he's 25-0, won that, of course, IBF world title. Before that, had the win over Montana Love, And a little bit inactive before that, though. He'd been out of the ring for 14 months before he lost. Or sorry, he lost. He beat Brock Jarvis by first round knockout. And that's probably the only slight I've got on Liam, is that he's been relatively inactive, and that's probably why I've got him at number 3 at the moment. Look, the Subriel Matias, as they called him, the boogeyman, a very, very good fighter, and Liam exposed him, I think, for being well, he's not the boogeyman, that's for sure, but not as well, being a little bit limited, I think, with Matias. But Liam Paro went to Puerto Rico, by the way. It's no mean feat to go to your opposition's backyard, and he did it. Won conclusively. What were the scorecards there? So 116, 111, 115, 112, and 115, 112. So to actually get a point deducted, go to your opponent's backyard, I thought it was an awesome job by Liam Paro. And for me, he is the number 3 ranked fighter at the moment. Oh, there's much. Oh, sorry, I forgot we didn't. We had comments there. He was inactive due to injury. Yeah, he was a little bit of both, Mutsy. He was supposed to fight Regis Prograis. I'm not sure. Is that me talking to me or someone else? Yeah, he was inactive because of I think he had, was it the 2 Achilles strains or ruptures or something, I think it was, Mutsy. He was supposed to fight Regis Prograis, and that got scrapped, and Prograis fought Haney instead. But before that, so he fought... So it was June, obviously, this year he beat Matias. Before that, so he last fought in December last year, but before that, yeah, as I said, 14 months off since the Brock Jarvis fight, and that was the one where in between he was supposed to fight Regis Prograis. So before that, he was out of the ring for 10 months. And yeah, that's what I said, it hasn't been overly active, but I'm sure it's going to pick up now. Some big money fights for Liam Paro out there on the horizon. He's got the luxury now of not having to travel so much. Is that there? Lily Ann Fekitoa. How are you, Lily Ann? Australia boxing, probably the best it's ever been. Yeah, well, it is. And that's the thing, Lily Ann. I mean, you look at, well, I'll put the list up after we get to number 1, just the quality that we have at the moment, and more importantly, the quality of opponents coming through, the ones that didn't actually make the list. So it's, yeah, we're well on the way at the moment. So we'll go to number 2. And I've gone for Tim Tszyu. Now, again, the top 3, you could probably throw up in the air again, and you could probably make an argument that Tim is number 1. You could probably make an argument that he's number 3 or 4. So, but I think number 2 is about right. I think for me, even though he's not currently a world champion, we all know the circumstances of the Fundora fight. And I think we all know who's going to be number 1 in a sec. But yeah, look, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, he is coming off a loss, so we've got to take that into account. But again, the circumstances are there as well. But I think a clear number 2 for me. Arguably number 2, again, you could probably have it at number 1 or as low as 3. And of course, the main man, in my opinion, Jai Pataya, coming off the win over Breedis in the rematch. So I don't think there's, well, I was going to say there's not much argument there, but I'm sure there's, you could make an argument for a few of these different guys, predominantly maybe Tim Tszyu, but there's the top 10 there. So we've got Nikita Tszyu at number 10. We've got Paulo Akuso at number 9. We've got Liam Wilson at number 8. Andrew Maloney at number 7. Sam Goodman at number 6. George Kambosos at number 5. Jason Maloney at 4. Liam Paro at 3. Tim Tszyu at 2. And Jai Pataya at 1. Now, there's probably a couple of fighters that maybe you could have put in there, maybe ahead of Paulo Akuso and Nikita Tszyu. Probably the main one, I think, maybe Justice Huni. Now, Justice has had, I think, 10 or 11 fights, but you could probably argue he's got a better resume than Nikita Tszyu. Again, it's arguable, but I just think Nikita Tszyu at this stage has been a lot more active. And I just think ability-wise at the moment, I think he might just have Justice covered. But of course, Justice with another fight coming up soon. So he's probably the one on the precipice, I think, is Justice. I'm just trying to think. If Yusuf beats Liam Wilson next week, you could probably put him there. Jalen Tate is probably one that you could probably throw up as well. There's probably a couple anyway, but that's the state of boxing in Australia at the moment. Look, take out probably the 9 and 10 because they're still up-and-comers, but look at that top 8. All of them have fought for or will fight for world titles this year. Just confirm that. So Jai has, Tim has, Liam has, Jason has, George has, Sam will, Andrew has. I know it was for the interim title, and Liam Wilson has as well. So we've got 8 fighters that have or will fight for world titles this year. So it's a great time for Australian boxing. Casper, sorry about the writing there, mate. Seen Timmy just arrived in Thailand. Should be fight announcement soon. Then I'd say, yeah. Well, he normally goes to Thailand to start his preparation. And I know he was just over there with his dad, Kostya, but I got a feeling, and what I heard, it was more of a catch up with his dad, and it was just a nice neutral halfway point for both men. So now it looks like he's going to start his official camp. Now, he normally does it. This is more David. Steve has retired. Tim sort of does a pre-camp in Thailand, so he'll have a couple of weeks over there, and then I think he starts his main camp, which is about 8 weeks. So we could be looking for maybe mid-September. Tim might be back. So if that's the case, it would be very exciting. So I don't know. What do you guys think of it? If you've got any other order you might have them in, I could probably say, I think Jaya Pattaya for me is a clear number 1 at the moment. Maybe you could make a case between Tim and Liam. I just think, again, as good as Liam's win was, Tim's sort of done it over 3 or 4 or 5 fights in a row before that Fundora fight. So that's why I've got him. And Jason, I think, has, I think Jason, has been a little bit more impressive than George. George, again, I know the level of competition has just been out of this world, but end of the day, he has lost 3 of the 4 fights. And more importantly, hasn't really performed at a level that we saw against Teofimo Lopez. Now, that Teofimo Lopez for me is one of the best Aussie performances of all time for me, probably top 3 or 4 of all time. But David, I normally do the women's, mate. What would be cool to see an Aussie women's ranking at some point? Yeah. As I said, mate, I have done them in the past. It's a bit hard to fit them all in. But look, if I was probably going to go off the top of my head, it would be Sky Nicholson at number 1, Shanika Johnson number 2, and then it's probably a range of fighters after that you could probably throw in at for 3 and onwards. Ebony Bridges, Shannon O'Connell, Taylor Robinson. So you could probably make a case for all those girls. I like little Jazzy Parr as well. So some good girls out there. Next time I'll do that, mate. But as I said tonight, it's just the guys. But so I don't know. As I said, I think just Jason's probably been a little bit more impressive. He went to Japan and lost that decision, but before that, they did sort of label him as the road warrior, didn't they? But I just think at least in his fights, he's been super competitive. Won some fights, and George, unfortunately, just since that Teofimo Lopez fight, just hasn't been able to find his feet. And you could probably argue that he's lost his last 4 fights, but he has fought some very, very good opposition as well. G'day, Glenn. How you going, mate? I've just got the top 10 Aussies up there at the moment. What do you think? I know there could probably be some cases made for a couple of other fighters at 9 and 10. As I said, could be Jalen Tate, Justice Hooney. I'm just trying to think who else. There's probably a couple anyway. I think 100% though the likes of Michael Zarafa, Isaac Harbin. I didn't actually include Michael as he's another one that's fought for a world title this year. So 9 fighters. And that's just the guys. We've also had the 2 girls as well. So 11 Aussie fighters have fought for world titles this year. It's just amazing. So, but that's it there. Again, let me know your thoughts. As I said at the start, it's always fraught with danger, but I think that's a pretty good mix. I think at least the top 8, there's not much arguing. Again, the order could be up for discussion, but for me, that is it there. All right, well, that gets us on to the world scene. This is probably where it gets a little bit more complicated. This is, and it's funny, it's probably just that time of year, but in the last sort of couple of days since I decided to do this, I've seen updated pound-for-pound lists everywhere. I've deliberately not really had much of an eye on them. Just, I didn't want to be too influenced by other people's lists. So I've gone for mine here, and again, have you say, that's always debatable, all these picks. So let's start at number 10. I've gone for Shakur Stevenson now. Shakur, look, he did sort of retire there at one stage, but he's, of course, back. He's fighting this weekend, so it's great for one thing to have him back. I'm just going to type his record up here. I'll just go back there for a sec. Keep the comments coming, guys. I'm normally about 30 seconds behind, so if I move on, I'll go back. So what's that, Glenn George? God bless him. Got a bit lucky after a great victory. Like his attitude, but he's just not in my top 10. Not in your top 10 in Australia. Wow. Geez, Glenn. Who would you have in front of him at number 10? So what did I have him at? I had it number, what was it? Number 5, was it? I had him at number 5. So you wouldn't even have him in your top 10. Wow. Okay, well, please explain. I'd love to hear it. All right. All right, but yeah, I'm not sure, Glenn. I just can't think of anyone else that could replace him, to be honest, and how those other fighters could go in front of him. But hey, that's why we get on here and discuss it. But Shakur Stevenson, 21-0. Casper, what's up? Was Shakur on your last rating? No, I don't think he, or was he? No, because I think he was retired last time, Casper. And look, I deliberately probably didn't go back on my last. Actually, I think I might have had it here. Let me just have a look for a sec. I think I do have it on here. And I'll be able to let you know exactly. Yes, I did actually. There we go. I can't put it up now. It's just on an old file. But I had Shakur Stevenson at number 9 last time, so he's just drifted. Of course, he's been inactive, so I had him at number 9. I'll try and bring it up, or I'll go through it at the end. Yeah, but last time, number 9, dropped to number 10 for me. And looking at my list from last time, there's been no change as far as the names in there. It's just the order that's changed. So, again, let me know your thoughts. So that's Shakur Stevenson at number 10. I don't think he's going to change at all, even if he wins this week. Was it Avanasian? I can never pronounce his name properly. I know. Hara, is that right? That's funny. They've spelled his name. They've got Artem Harayanyan. I thought it was Avanasian. Anyway, maybe I've got that mixed up with someone else. But he's fighting him this week, so I'm not sure that will get him any extra points. But for now, number 10. All right, let's move on. One of my favourite fighters, even though he did beat one of my other favourite fighters. This is Junto Nakatani, number 9. What more is there to say about Junto Nakatani? I saw him up close and personal when he beat our man Andrew Maloney last year. It wasn't a very good night, but I just remember looking at this guy thinking, this is the guy that could beat Inoue. He's got all the tools. I know that's a bold statement with Inoue, but this guy is tall, long reach. He's fast. He can punch. He's got all the tools to give someone like Inoue a real shot. And what a fight that would be if it was the case in Japan. All right, Glenn, you got 2 split decision victories leading up to the TO fight, and since that win has lost every fight. Nikita is better than him, as an example. Yeah, well, that's one of those examples, as I said earlier in the show, Glenn, that is it a case of just natural talent, or is it resume? Now, by resume, you'd have to say that George has got the better resume over Nikita, even just based on the Teofimo Lopez fight. But again, having said that, nearly 3 years ago that fight was, so how long do we hang on past performances? So this is why it's always difficult to do. But I think you've been a bit stiff on George Kambosos. I mean, the fights he's lost, they've been in big fights. Maybe not so the Maxie Hughes fight, and I agree he was very lucky to win that fight. He could have easily lost his last 4 fights, but geez, he's got a few brownie points up his sleeve, if you ask me, from that Teofimo Lopez fight. But again, how many brownie points does he get? So good points though. But yeah, Junto Nakatani, 27-0. He is, I think, a 2-time world champion. So he won the flyweight world title back in 2021, Superfly, and has just won the bantamweight. So a 3-time world champion, and he's actually scheduled to fight on the 20th of this month against a Jason Maloney opponent in Vincent Astrolabia. So I would suspect he'd get the job done there. Just going to check out that card. So we've got, so Kosei Tanaka is on that card as well. He's fighting Jonathan Rodriguez. Nakatani's fighting Astrolabio. And there is the Rico Kano and Anthony Olasquaga, WBO World Flyweight title fight. So big event in Japan. But yeah, I just love this guy. He's got all the tools, and as I said, I really think he would be a shot of giving Nail Inoue all he can handle. So for me, number 9. Now I had him last time at number 10, so pretty much Nakatani and Stevenson have swapped positions. All right, Glenn, doubling down here. Maxi beat him, and I think the other guys owned him, not top 10. So you don't think he's even the top 10 in Australia, Glenn? Wow, that is bizarre. But hey, that's your opinion. Would you have Paul Awakuso in front of George Kambosos? Let me know who your top 10, and again, the ones I've got, or you think that I might have wrong, let me know. But geez, George Kambosos is not in the top 10. I'm not sure I could go that far, Glenn, but hey, it's a free world. We can have our own opinions. All right, so we go to number 8. I've gone for Arta Betabeev. Now, I know there might be a lot out there that might see Arta Betabeev as being a bit higher. It's not necessarily a case of him doing anything to sort of to go down. It's probably that others have done a lot to go up, if that makes sense. I know he's had the injury, and I know he's been out, and who knows whether he's going to actually make it to the starting line to fight Bivol. I hope he does, and so far, touch wood, fingers crossed, and everything else, he's on his way. But again, as I said, it's more so not necessarily him doing anything wrong. It's just other fighters I think have just sort of gone past him. He's 39 years of age. His last fight was it about a year ago, was it? Let's have a look. All right, so his record is 20-0. I like how they've got him as Canadian on BoxRec. They're not allowed to say his country. I'm going to say it. He's Russian. All right, so he hasn't fought since January. That was against Callum Smith. That was a really, really good win. Before that, he had the win over Anthony Yard, but it was a year before that, and then 7 months before that against Joe Smith. So, look, I love Arta Betabeev, but I just think he's just slipping down the rankings a little bit because the others have just done it a little bit more than him in the last sort of 12 months. All right, so still on the Aussie top 10. Huni is better. Akuso is better. God, Sky Nicholson is better. Geez, okay. I won't enroll you into the George Kambosos fan club. Not a big George fan at all. I think he's been extremely overrated, but he's hands down top 10 in the country, in my opinion. Well, that's sort of where I've got him, Caspar. Well, had him at number 5, but I mean, I'll just quickly go back there. I just don't think Nikita's done anywhere near enough yet. Paulo Akuso hasn't. I mean, these guys haven't even fought for regional belts, although Paulo might have, but regional belts, let alone world title belts, let alone had a big win over someone like Teofimo Lopez. You've got Liam Wilson, who's lost 2 world title fights. Andrew's lost a couple of world title fights as well. Sam Goodman hasn't even fought for one yet. So I'm just not sure how any of those could be in front of George. But hey, again, it's a free country. Betabeev dropped also down to 8. Sounds good. He beats Bivol. He'll be back in the top 5. Yeah, I think so, Tommy. If he does beat Bivol, I think he probably top 3 or 4 really. A lot of competition in there at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. Call it gut feel. He hasn't done anything wrong. As I said before, I just think others have just gone past him a little bit at the moment. But still a big fan of Arta Betabeev. And let's see whether he can turn back the clock when he fights Dimitri Bivol in, I think it's October. You have Zhu over Liam, even after the big upset win. This is Tim Zhu. Yeah, no, I do, Tommy. I think we've got to give Tim a little bit of leeway in that. Up until then, he was just on an absolute tear, and I think even in the fight with Fundora, look, that's why I said, Tommy, I wouldn't argue with anyone who maybe said that Liam is in front of Tim. But my rationale was, I think we've got to have a bit of an asterisk beside Tim's fight with Fundora. I really do. I just think with the cut, it's almost, for me, I'm always going to cancel it out, almost have it as an unofficial no contest, in my opinion. I actually think Tim won the fight anyway, if you ask me. But even with that, I think the circumstances of the fight, I just think, for me, as I said, I've just sort of got like a bit of a virtual no contest in that one, Tommy, and that's why I've still got Tim over Liam. Liam's was a great win, don't get me wrong, magnificent win, one of the best I've seen, but I just think Tim's resume more than stacks up, and then you come down to ability. I think he's the better fighter, and I just think he's going to probably accomplish a lot more. I know that doesn't come into it because we're not looking down the track, we're looking at right here and now. Tough one, but look, Tommy, I wouldn't argue with anyone who said that Liam should be above Tim, just in my opinion. I suppose you can almost call it gut feel that I still have Timsoo over Liam. Liam still, look, I was going to say almost still has to prove himself. He's done more than prove himself, of course, at the top level, but now I want to see him do it on a more regular basis, and let's see if he can defend the belt and then go on with it. I know Tim hasn't exactly had the stellar career either, by the way. I know here in Australia, his status is, as a superstar, and I get that, but I know he hasn't exactly had that legacy win either. But I just think overall his body of work is a little bit better than Liam's at the moment. So, all right, David, correct me if I'm wrong, but pound for pound lists are based on more than just records, right? Activity, personality, KOs, etc. No, I don't think it's based on personality or KOs, David. I think, and this is where it gets tricky. You've got it so that you can have, if you have the resume, obviously is what I like to go. I don't count records as such, especially in historical pound for pounds and all that sort of stuff. But I think it just goes by obviously the quality of opposition you've beaten, but also how often you fight. And you'll see that a little bit later on with my top sort of 3 or 4. To me, you have to be semi-active. Some of the fighters have had great wins, but we just don't see enough of them. And I think, look, again, everyone has their own criteria. And even with top 10s, David, I mean, I think anyone could probably make a case that, do you really have to rank the top 10? Can you just have the best 10 fighters in the world, in your opinion, in no particular order? That's probably the easiest way to do it. But you've got to have someone at number 10 and someone at number 1. So, but look, everyone has their own criteria. But for me, it's quality of opposition, the activity of the fighter, and sometimes if it comes right down to it, like with Liam and Tim, it just comes down to a bit of a gut feel, who I think is just the better fighter. So that's sort of the way I do it anyway. Caspar, do you have Bivol beating better? There's a lot of B's there, Caspar. Bivol beating Better Beev. Yes, I do. Yeah. I think Better Beev is a great fighter. Bivol is a great fighter. I just think Bivol has been more active, a little bit younger, of course. And I just think he has that style and that Russian metal about him that he'll be able to match the toughness and hardness of Better Beev and maybe be able to withstand that onslaught a little bit more than some other fighters. So I just think Bivol has got a few more tools, I suppose, some weapons, and I think that'll be enough to keep Better Beev at bay and win a 12-round decision. All right, Glenn. Tim's still in front of Liam until he gets another world-class victory like a Cruz, for example. Yeah, that's probably what I'm getting at as well, Glenn. It was a great win, but if we're sort of saying, well, Liam's got to be in front of Tim, we're almost using the George Kambosos sort of rationale. He had that massive win over Teofimo Lopez that no one can ever take away. And as I said before, probably my top 3 best Aussie performances of all time was George over Teo. But yeah, I just think again on that gut feel, like you said there, Tim's still in front of Liam. I just want to see Liam at least have another 1 or 2 defenses of that belt. He's going to have plenty of opportunities to prove me wrong or you wrong, whoever it is, but and just solidify his reign as champion. But let's let him get over that win over Matthias. But I think when you're talking pound for pound, it's got to be over a little bit of a body of work as well, not just one fight. One fight might actually progress you up the ladder just a little bit, but if you're inactive or whatever, you can also slip down a little bit. So for me, again, call it gut feel. I've got Tim ahead of Liam. All right, we'll move on to number 7. Hang on, we'll get a couple of other comments there. If it's really close between 2 fighters, I do look at performance. Yeah, and that's another thing, Tommy. It could be how impressive they looked in those wins. So yeah, there's a whole lot of criteria out there that we have to work out, but everyone's got their own. Cannot wait for the pay-per-view in October. Yeah, well, let's hope we get there. It was October 12th, I think it is, Damien. So let's hope we get there, mate. Should be awesome. Glenn says, Bivol wins, best defense and lead hand in boxing. Yep, I'm with you there, Glenn. All right, while we've got a bit of a break in comments there, let's go to number 7. I'm sure this will cause a little bit of debate. I've gone for Gervonta Tank Davis. Coming off, of course, that great win over Frank Martin. It's amazing how many people didn't actually rate Frank Martin before the fight, everyone was talking about him up until he got the fight with Davis. How much of a great prospect he was, and hang on, I've put in Javante Martin. It's Javante Davis, of course. But I just thought Javante was probably, I'd say in the top 2 performances I've ever seen him in his career. So he's 30-0. Coming off, of course, before that was the win over Ryan Garcia, which I don't think gets enough credit. Before that was the win over Hector Luis Garcia, Rolly Romero, Isaac Cruz, Mario Barrios, Leo Santa Cruz, Yurioka Gamboa. So on a real good streak there for Javante Tank Davis. So again, I thought he looked the best, maybe in the top 2 performances that I've ever seen him. And for me, number 7. So I probably understand why it might raise a few eyebrows, but I just think the guy's a superstar. I really do. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be very, very hard to beat. I think he beats Lomachenko. I think he would beat Shakur Stevenson. I think he would absolutely belt Devin Haney if he went up to 140. So I just think he is the man at lightweight at the moment. So Glenn obviously doesn't agree there. I'll move on quickly. All right, now this is one that I'm pretty pleased to elevate this. Actually, I'll go back to, by the way. Who did I have? I didn't go to it before. Who was last one? Better Beav. I had him at number 6 last time. Now he's at number 8. And Tank Davis, actually, I thought I'd actually elevated him. I had him at number 7 last time as well. So he hasn't actually gone up on my list, but probably because there's a guy in front of him that's had, I think, an even better performance. But yeah, for me, number 7 is Tank Davis. And let's get on to number 6. As we discuss him, it is Jesse Bam Rodriguez. What a performance last weekend with that big win over Juan Francisco Estrada. I'll type in his record as we go. Tommy, would you say Frank Martin was probably Tank's most talented opponent? That's a good question. It's hard to say, Tommy, because Frank Martin was very untested as well. And a lot of these fighters look great talent-wise against lesser lights. But I must admit, even though I gave Frank Martin this much chance against Davis, and when I say this much, I'm probably talking about 10%, 5%, whatever it might be. But he just doesn't have the power at that weight to keep someone like Javante Davis off. So I don't think he is. I think, I don't know. Again, how do you define most talented? I mean, Ryan Garcia would be one. Isaac Cruz is another. Not so much Rolly Romero. I would probably say that Ryan Garcia is his best opponent, Tommy. And you could probably make a case for Isaac Cruz as well. Yeah, Bam a big yes. I loved him on the weekend. I just thought he showed everything. Now, granted, Estrada hadn't fought for 18 months. I get that. And he was 34, 35 years old, whatever it might have been. But he just did everything he was supposed to do. And I know he did get knocked down, but up until then, it was just a show. It really was. Jesse Rodriguez just did what he wanted to. Just great punching, great footwork, great power, and just got the job done. What's that, Tommy? Do you think Bam's footwork rivals Loma footwork today? Yeah, I don't think it's as good as Loma, Tommy, but either way, I love the way he stepped around or to the left or to the right, and just because Estrada's a little bit like Juan Manuel Marquez. Great technical skills, but not very fast with his hands or his feet. So I thought it was a great strategy by Bam is to be, because he's a lot faster to punch and then just scoot around to the right or scoot around to the left and just not be there to exchange with Estrada. And even without punching first, he would be in close and he would go to the side and then he would punch. So he wouldn't punch straight on with Estrada and sort of fall into Estrada's sort of range when they were exchanging. He just always gave him angles, which always made it hard for Estrada to really set himself. And as I said, Estrada's not the fastest guy in the world with hand or his feet. And I just think Jesse Rodriguez exposed him. And, of course, Robert Garcia in his corner would have been looking at Estrada and thinking, how do we expose his flaws? I thought Bam Rodriguez did it to the T. So an awesome performance from Tommy. From Tommy? From Bam. Sorry, Tommy, I'm looking at your name there. What a fight it'd be, by the way, if he fought anyway. I don't think it's going to happen, but wow. What a fight that would be. Just amazing. All right, Glenn. Tank has never fought a live dog in his weight class ever. Well, I think you got to give him again some credit for fighting Garcia, Glenn. I mean, Garcia is probably a natural 154 and would have killed himself to come down. Now I know it was a catch weight and everything else, but that's the strategy from Tank. But I think Isaac Cruz is another one. I understand Leo Santa Cruz went up in weight, but geez, Roller Romero was in his weight, and Garcia was probably above his weight, and yeah, I don't know. And I think again, Frank Martin had a lot of people saying he was the heir apparent. So yeah, you need a Snickers bar or something, I think, tonight, Glenn. You're in a little bit of a bad mood tonight, but that's fine. That's cool. All right, so Jesse Rodriguez, by the way, I had him at number 8 last time, so he's gone to number 6. What's that? What's that there? Bam was great, but I tipped my hat to Estrada. Yeah, he was awesome, Glenn. Just tough. I mean, I think we all knew that's what we're going to get with Estrada. You know, these Mexican fighters, they're just warriors. There's just no quit in them, and they just fight and they just bite down the mouth guard, and you know they'll just fight to the death. What's that, Tommy? I hope we don't get Estrada rematch. Get Bam. Let Bam go after Ioka. I agree. I would hope that someone talks Estrada out of the rematch, Tommy. I just don't think I think it ends earlier next time. I think now that Rodriguez has had a look at Estrada, I think it's an earlier stoppage for me. And Estrada might get hurt, I think. So for me, I think Ioka would be the fight, or maybe it's a Nakatani. I don't know, but wow, some big fights for Jesse Rodriguez out there, and I think we're about to see a new sort of age of Mexico versus Japan as being some of the best fights out there. So, and you're right, Kane, only 24 years of age. So let's just hope he gets those big fights. And I know the critics of Bam have said, well, he's only beating up yesteryear's great fighters. He hasn't really beaten anyone of this generation, which probably is a good point, which is why I think he needs to go to Japan and fight some of those guys over there. Some good fights for him there. So let's do it. Not sure what you're doing there, Devon, but that's all good. Garcia was weight drained on a rehydration clause. He looked like death. Yeah, but that's not necessarily Tank's fault, Glenn. I know he maybe would have said, well, if you want to fight, you have to make 136. But Ryan Garcia agreed to it. Maybe he sort of learned, of course, the lesson and then went on, put that into practice for the Haney fight. So, well, okay, well, I'll sign for the fight, but I'm going to do whatever I have to make sure I'm ready to go to win the fight and not necessarily make weight for the belt. And we all know Ryan's a loose cannon, but again, it's not Tank's fault. I know he would have been the one that said, well, this is the catch weight, but Garcia didn't have to accept it. So I haven't really got a lot of sympathy for Ryan now, especially in light of what happened with the Haney fight. All right, Devon, you can go. All right, you're out. All right. Yeah, I've got rid of him, Tommy. It's all good. Yeah, Mexico versus Japan would be insane. Now, maybe we've got to do... I don't know what I've done there. What did I do there? I've added myself to it. Maybe what we've got to do is hypothetical Mexico versus Japan, 5 versus 5, David. We might have to do that at some stage. They'll all be lower weight fights, of course, unless... I'm just trying to think. Who would the Japanese fighters be? Of course, Inoue, Nakatani, Takai, Inoue Jr. probably. There's so many great fighters from Japan. And, of course, we all know that Mexico has some great fighters as well. So I might have a look at that, see if we can come up with a 5x5 Mexico versus Japan. Ukraine, Australia, and Japan doing phenomenal things. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, Ukraine, have they got 3 or 4 world champions at the moment? Australia's got... Well, we should have 3, but we've only got 2. But we have had this year. How many have held world titles? So where are they? Well, obviously the top 5 have all held world. Andrew Maloney. So there's 6 fighters in the top 10 at the moment in Australia that have held or hold world titles. So, and Japan, I think they've got more than the States now. I think they said, and Ukraine would have to be up there as well. So, what's that? Yeah, you're right. Last where the best fights for Bam would be. Sorry, mate. I'll get back to that one there. So Because Inoue and Junto are both Japanese fighters. Will that keep that fight from ever happening? I don't think so, Tommy. I think the timing will be right. Geez, although it is a good question, I'm not quite sure how the boxing culture in Japan works, whether there's this whole respect thing and let them do their own thing. But geez, the Tokyo Dome, geez, there'd be, what's to get in there? 50, 60, 70,000? I mean, it'd be packed. And I'm sure they could have all the other Japanese fighting each other on the undercard. I mean, some just big, even just big all Japanese fights to be made. So it's exciting. And I know Jason Maloney is looking to probably base himself over there a little bit as well. Some big fights for him. Apparently, he was very well received in Japan. So can't blame Jason if that's the case, if he goes over there and chases some money, because at the stage of his career where he deserves it. So that's number 6 for me. That is Jesse Bam Rodriguez. All right, let's go to number 5. And we have Dimitri Bivol coming off the wins over Lyndon Arthur and Malik Zinad. So a very, very impressive resume has Dimitri Bivol. He's been active. He's been impressive. Probably not a lot more to say about Dimitri Bivol. I think a lot of it will, if he's standing, will be definitely geared towards that Beterbiev fight in October. Because I think if he beats Beterbiev, I think he would probably go up one for me to number 4. Maybe, depends on how impressive he is, would maybe go a little bit higher. Some other results would have to go his way as well with the guys above him. But yeah, he hasn't moved for me. Last time he was number 5, and for me, still number 5. But can't wait. That Beterbiev fight will really tell a lot. I think the winner of that fight will be in the top 3 or 4 pound for pound in the world. So can't wait to see that one. All right, we'll go to number 4. This is again arguable. This one, I've got Canelo Alvarez at number 4. Look, I just don't think Canelo's done anything wrong, and I know he cops a lot about the Benavidez situation, and I know he cops a lot about fighting different fighters at different times and weights and everything else. Same thing that happened to Floyd Mayweather. It happens to the greats of our generation, and I just don't think Canelo's done anything wrong in the ring. And I know you could probably make a case that, well, Bivol beat Canelo, so he should be ahead of him. I just think Canelo's probably done a little bit more since their fight to reinstate himself at number 4. However, I'm not going to argue. Well, there you go. You got Glenn already. I'm guessing Canelo's number 4. Swap him for Bivol. So I was just going to say I'd have no argument if Bivol was number 4, Canelo was number 5. So again, it's that gut feel thing. I just think Canelo since then has really got himself back on the map. I'm just going to bring up his record quickly. What's he had? Probably 3 fights since that, I reckon. Since that loss, 3 or 4. So he's 61-2-2. It's a great record. So since he lost, he's had more than that. So since he lost to Bivol in May of 2022, he's beaten Triple G. Now, I know people say, well, he was shot and over the hill, but people wanted to see the trilogy, and he gave him the trilogy fight and won. What was the score there? 116, 112, 115, 130, which is way closer than I would have had it. But anyway, then beat John Ryder, who again was on a bit of a roll as well. Charlo, and then Jaime Munguia, who besides Benavidez, I think is the next best opponent. So that's probably why I've got him at number 4. I think his quality of opposition for Bivol, since they both fought, is more impressive for Canelo. Well, since they last fought, I'll go to Bivol's record just quickly. He beat Zurdo Ramirez, so of course, yep, great win. Lyndon Arthur, Malik Zinad, so that's why I've gone for Canelo, Glenn. But no arguments, mate. I get it. All right, so this is where it gets tricky. The top 3. Now, I'll just preempt this by saying I know everyone's going to have their own way of working this out, and the top 3 probably like the Aussie top 3. You could, well, not. I think this is even harder than the Aussie top 3, but it's the particular order you have them in. It's very, very hard and tough, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of you out there that will disagree with the order. But again, we've got to have someone at number 3 and someone at number 1. All right, so let's go to number 3 for starters. I've gone for Terence Bud Crawford. Now, up until, actually just going back to, I think Canelo was number 4 last time on the list as well, by the way. So this is one I had to really debate over or dwell over, because for me, after he beat Errol Spence, I would have had him at number 1. The problem is, since then, he hasn't really done a lot. So he beat, obviously, Spence in July last year. Of course, he's got to fight Madrimov in another 4 or 5 weeks, or 3 or 4 weeks, whatever it is. Had the win over Avanage. That's where I'm getting the name from. Sean Porter, Cal Brook, but he hasn't been overly active. That's probably my main gripe towards Crawford. What's that, Tommy? I've seen a report today. Canelo is going to fight Berlanga or Jamal Charlo next. If Bud is impressive versus Israel Madrimov, I'd rather see him jump up to 168 or even Janabek. Yeah, I did see that, Tommy. Geez, I would hope it's Berlanga, if anyone. I know neither one of them really make me excited, I'll be honest, Tommy. But if I had to pick either one, I would probably say Berlanga because I just think we get a really good, exciting fight from Berlanga. Young guy, he's going to come, he's going to bring it, he's going to really put it on Canelo. I just don't know how they're going to sell Jamal Charlo after what his brother did. I can't even believe that he's even in discussions, Tommy. With this is Jamal Charlo. Well, how he's even in discussions to fight Canelo after what his brother did. Extremely hard to sell to the pay-per-view audience out there. Now, real fight fans are going to know it's a different Charlo, but the casuals aren't there that maybe bought it last time. They're not going to know. They're going to see Charlo again and say, hang on, isn't he even? This is the guy he fought last time and it was a stinker. So, yeah, I would hope it's Berlanga. There is actually reports also, Tommy, they might not go up against the UFC. Now, Canelo normally fights the second week of September for Mexican Independence Weekend, which this year is September the 14th. There is talk that they might put the fight back even a couple of weeks, so late September, or even go to October or even November, and then maybe gear up for a fight with Crawford in May next year or Benavides in May next year. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't think it's such a big deal to go up against the UFC. I think boxing fans are going to go to the boxing and they're going to buy it on pay-per-view. I don't think it's really going to have a big issue as far as splitting fans down the middle. I think I think the boxing fans that like UFC are going to still, if it's one or the other, they're going to buy the boxing. Where UFC fans, they're just UFC hardcore fans, and they're not going to worry about boxing anyway. So it's interesting. We'll see what happens. And that UFC event, by the way, is going to be at the Las Vegas Sphere. Wow, it'll just be unbelievable to see that. It'll just be crazy. So they're going to be up against it if he fights someone like Berlanga or even Charlo. So, all right, Glenn. Usyk, Inoue, Crawford in that order. Pretty easy. Okay. Bud beats Israel and becomes 4-time division champion, crossing from 135 to now 154 and make him 2 pound for pound and put Inoue 3. Yep, that's cool. Inoue activity is a difference right now. He needs to fight Benavides. Anyone else is a duck. And Charlo, yeah, I hear you, Glenn. I'm with you there, mate. It's just odd you pay step around money to skull for Berlanga. Yeah, I agree, Tommy. You think you would do that for Benavides? 100%. That would be the only reason I would think you would pay step aside money for someone like Skull. You would say, well, this is the fight everybody wants. Or better yet, Tommy, just give up the belt. Who cares? Does it have to be for the undisputed? I don't think it matters. We've seen that with Usyk at the moment. He's just given up the IBF belt or been asked to give it up. So, so that's number 3 for Crawford. He was number 3 last time as well. And Tommy, I'm about to upset you because I have Alexander Usyk at number 2. Now, again, I'm not going to argue with anybody that has him at number 1. I think we all know who's number 1, by the way, but we have to have someone at number 1, number 2. I would make a case for Crawford to still be number 1. I think you could make a case. But look, great performance over Fury. I just think this guy who I've got at number 1 has just been more impressive. I know you can bring up the undisputed situation, but this guy has won undisputed, twice or even 3 times, or twice it might be as well. I know the level, just give up the belt. Yep. I'm just waiting for you, Glenn, to have a crack at me about this. But look, I think you can make an argument for all 3 of those guys in any particular order to be number 1, 2, or 3. Now, I'll just bring up the actual pound for pound there. So you can see there, number 10, Shakur Stevenson, number 9, Junto Nakatani, number 8, Artur Beterbiev, number 7, Javante Tank Davis, 6 is Jesse Rodriguez, 5 is Bivol, 4 is Canelo Alvarez, 3 is Terence Crawford, 2 is Alexander Usyk, 1 is Naoya Inoue. Now, I think for me, the inactivity is the one thing for me that I put Crawford at number 3. I just think he, as good as that performance was against Spence, the fact he hasn't fought for nearly a year now, and before that hadn't been overly active as well. You've got to, in any normal probably time in boxing, you would probably still have him at number 1. But Alexander Usyk and Naoya Inoue have had some unbelievable wins, and they've been, more importantly, they've been active. Now, I know you can make the case with Alexander Usyk. He's beaten Joshua twice. He's beaten Dubois, and now he's beaten Fury. Became undisputed heavyweight champion. Naoya Inoue, though, I think has been just as impressive, or probably more impressive, as far as his performance goes. And it's just the way he's gone about it. He's just demolished every single person in his way. And I just think he's been a little bit more impressive. And I think his resume stacks up with Usyk, but I just think he's been a little bit more impressive. But Glenn, you obviously disagree. Yep. Usyk is bashing blokes 40 pounds heavier. Love in a way, but he's a close second for me. Yeah, no, that's cool. As I said, mate, normally I would still have Terence Crawford at number 1. I really would. He hasn't really done anything except not fight. And in July last year, in my opinion, he was number 1 by a mile. What he didn't count on, though, is Alexander Usyk has had a couple of great performances, and Naoya Inoue has as well. So, yeah, look, Glenn, I'm not going to argue with you about who's number 1 or 2. I think it's almost a tie, in my opinion. But for me, you got to make a decision. I just think Inoue has just gone about it a little bit better. This guy is just demolishing people. I understand Usyk's giving up. I wouldn't say I suppose he's giving up 40 pounds, but he's also got the advantage of a bit of youth, a bit of not so much youth, has he? But speed and everything else. So yeah, I don't know. I just think Naoya Inoue has just been on an absolute path of destruction. No one has come close to beating Naoya Inoue, and you've got to make a decision. So I've gone for Inoue, mate. So, all right, Tommy. Usyk in his last 4 fights has gone 3-0 against the 2 best heavyweights of his generation. Dubois, a top 5 heavy. Tough to beat that from a quality perspective. Yeah, it is. It is. I'll accept that. It's Usyk's skill that gets him where he is. Inoue is as skillful as he relies on his physical attributes. Yep. All 10 can shuffle. I like your listing. Usyk is probably number 1 though. Yep, that's cool. And I'm with you there, Glenn. What an era we live in. I mean, normally you might have the top 2. You could probably argue, over the generation. I mean, we had, of course, Mayweather and Pacquiao, and we had, De La Hoya and Trinidad and Roy Jones Jr. in their generation, or slightly before Mayweather and Pacquiao. And it's just over the journey. You're always going to have maybe an argument for 1 and 2, but to have 3 fighters that could easily make the argument. I mean, hey, look, Terence Crawford, you could also make a point that I know Usyk's had those great wins and Inoue's been destructive, but Crawford, that win over Errol Spence, now that was a 50-50 fight. That was for the undisputed title. The tips for the punters was split down the middle. It was a massive fight, and Terence Crawford absolutely took Spence apart. And I know in hindsight it's easy to say, oh, well, Spence had the accident and had the eye injury and been inactive and all that, but no one knew that at the time. So I've just never seen something like, in a quality fight of that, or a fight of that magnitude, someone like Crawford who just did what he did and dismantled Errol Spence. So based on that, you could make an argument. But the problem is, since then, he hasn't fought. And even Madrimov, I know everyone's saying, Madrimov's this and Madrimov's that. Look, he's had 10 fights or 11 fights. Totally unproven, if you ask me. I think Crawford's chance at greatness is going up and fighting Canelo, and I would give him a good chance to beat Canelo. I really would. I love Canelo, and I know the weight would be a massive issue. I think Crawford gives Alvarez all he can handle. But anyway, that's an argument for another time. All right, so there it is again there. So I've gone with Inoue at number 1, Usyk at number 2, Crawford at number 3, Canelo at 4, Dimitri Bivol at 5, Bam Rodriguez at 6, Tank Davis at number 7, Artur Beterbiev at number 8, Junto Nakatani at 9, Shakur Stevenson as number 10. Yeah, well, yeah. Sorry, I'll go back to my the home page there. All right. Yeah, no, it's a good point, Batman. I don't know. The only thing I would think that would give Madrimov a bit of an opportunity to win against Crawford is if he's maybe aged overnight. I think if the Crawford turns up that fought Spence, I just think I won't say an easy night, but I I just think he gets the job done without many problems, to be honest. I think Madrimov, you're right, he's a live opponent. But this is Terence Crawford we're talking about. I just think he just rises to the occasion. I think he'll get the job done again. So, in fact, it wouldn't be surprised at all if he beats Crawford. Yeah, okay. Well, look, it would definitely throw things into disarray, wouldn't it, in the world in world boxing if that was the case? Because all of a sudden Madramov's going to be one of the main men in boxing, isn't he? So no issue with the names, just the rankings a bit. Who would be 11 on your pound for pound list if you had to pick someone? Good call. Maybe Teofimo Lopez is probably one I can think of. Maybe Lomachenko is another one. I'm just trying to think and go through. I think Jai Bataille would be top 15, definitely, I think. I'm just trying to go through the divisions. So light, we've got the light heavies in there. The middleweights probably, maybe potentially Janabek. But I think if I had to pick 11, Tommy, I think you'd probably go for Teofimo Lopez or maybe Lomachenko. But for me, I would probably go for Teo. I would probably think. Some great fighters out there, though. It's so hard at the moment. It really is. It really is. So that's about it, guys. We've got some more comments there. Put them in there, and we can chat about it. But again, it's not an easy exercise. And I think, if anything, as I said earlier, you probably should just pick the top 10 fighters of all time and be done with it. Maybe what I'll do is we did it, I think, in one of our first ever episodes. We did the top 10 pound for pound fighters of all time. And then we did a couple of divisions as well. What do you reckon that would look like? The top 10, geez, that opened a can of worms as well. A lot of people judging fighters who they hadn't even seen fight. They're judging them by records. So, and I made a point of never rating a fighter on someone that I haven't even really seen. I mean, it's hard. When you go right back to the Jack Johnsons and these types of guys, I mean, we barely see any footage of them. So Jack Dempsey and all those types of guys. It's probably actually Jack Dempsey's probably a little bit out there on him, but it's very, very hard. And even the Aussie stuff, Les Darcy. Have we got any footage on Les Darcy at all that shows him actually fighting? So anyway, it's a tough one. But guys, we'll leave it at that for tonight. Always, again, like to do this live just so we get a little bit of feedback. I know that we don't normally get a lot of views on the night, but it's a good discussion point after the fact when it's on YouTube. What's that, Tommy? I agree. It's a shame. Teo, 3 of his last 4 fights haven't been mediocre performance, or he'd definitely be higher. Yeah, struggled a bit in a few of his fights, Tommy, and maybe if he had done a little bit better job with Claggett on the weekend, maybe he might have replaced. Who do we have at number 10? Stevenson. But yeah, it's a tough one, mate. But look, I think overall boxing is an extremely good position at the moment. So many big fights that are about to happen or maybe happen down the track. And it's a great time to be a boxing fan. So yeah, exactly, Glenn. No footage of Harry Greb. This is why I didn't have him in my top 10. Mike Altamura said I don't know anything about boxing. I said, well, mate, if you show me some footage, not just the box record of him. I mean, I don't know. And who knows how much records have been doctored over the decades. So I don't know. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. All right, guys. Again, that is it for tonight. Again, appreciate you tuning in, and we might catch you. We'll hopefully see you next week on Talking Boxing, and we've got the live watch along next Wednesday night for the pay-per-view here in Australia. So thanks, and we'll catch you next time.